What's up guys, today I'm going to be going over my favorite build of all time. If you guys don't remember me making this video originally, it's going to be the Huckleberry, Loaded Question, then also Wendigo GL3 build. And last season when this build was at its peak, it pretty much did everything you ever needed in the game. But a lot of the things in this build relied on LUNAFACTION boots or Rally Barricade, and obviously the auto-loading portion of those two things got removed, which impacted this build greatly. So is it still good? That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. First with the easy one, Huckleberry. While all the other damage perks in the game such as Rampage, Kill Clip, Swashbuckler, Master of Arms all got nerfed, the Rampage on Huckleberry did not get changed. So while everything else got a lot worse, it stayed the same, so therefore it got pretty much a lot better compared to everything else in the game. It does the most damage per shot of any SMG in the game except Taraba with the perk, and when you pair that with Ride the Bull where you're going to be shooting quicker and quicker, almost like a 900 RPM SMG without losing any damage, then you pair that with the Catalyst where getting a kill will reload the entire magazine. This thing is unmatched in terms of red bar clear. It is by far the best primary in the game for PvE. It can strike through anything in front of it, including majors at times, and you never have to reload. So it's just the ultimate primary weapon for PvE. Up next, we have Loaded Question with its main perk right here. When the battery is full, your next burst deals additional damage and causes enemies to explode on death. So that is only on the first shot of each magazine when the magazine is full with 7 in the mag. And it does two things. First, it will increase the damage, so as you see, it hits 33.22 without the perk. Now with the perk, it hits 44.28, which is going to be a 33.3% increase from 23,000 total damage to just under 31,000 total damage per shot, which is actually pretty good. Then the second part is things explode on death, which means you can pretty much shoot in a straight line, and anything that dies to that first bolt of the magazine will explode in this huge radius, way better than Dragonfly. It's a huge explosion. But unlike before, where you can use something like LUNAFACTION boots to shoot that first shot over and over again, now you have to manually reload or wait for the perk to come back. So you can use auto-loading holster where you shoot, swap weapons, then it takes like 3 or 4 seconds, then it reloads the bullet for you, then you can swap back and do it again, or you can just do it the old-fashioned way, shoot, reload over and over again. But obviously the lack of auto-loading in this game severely impacts the DPS of this weapon. It wasn't great before, it was usable in different situations, but now shooting off the entire magazine takes 9.2 seconds, and over that time the DPS is only 22,742, which isn't bad, but definitely not great for a special weapon. So you can definitely tell where this weapon struggles now without LUNAFACTION in the game. For single targets, it's not that great. Then if there's a bunch of ads in different locations where you can't like line them all up, it's obviously going to struggle there too. But where this thing does work really well in those group clears for either red bars or majors, god damn does it work really well, and it's still just as good as it was before. So in those situations where you just pull it out once and kill an entire group of enemies and put it away, let it reload, that way it's good to go when you need it again. It works perfectly in that scenario still. But before it was also pretty good for single target damage, while now it's only good for that group ad clear, which sounds a lot like Huckleberry. So the utility of these two weapons kind of overlap a lot more than they used to. And they're pretty much only good at that one thing, but they're pretty much unmatched in the two best things for ad clear, but it's kind of hard using two weapons that are only good for the same thing. And that brings us to the third part of this build, Wendigo GL3 with Explosive Light. I think we all know what that does. Its utility is still as good as ever with that increased blast radius and also the blinding grenades. It's really good ad clear, and also the burst damage over the first magazine is really good too. But after the first magazine, once you start reloading, the damage per second drops off a lot with this weapon, and since Loaded Question isn't very usable anymore for single target damage, swapping in something like a God Roll 11 Death, where you're then be getting much better DPS over the entire reserves of the weapon, makes a lot more sense to me. So something like Spike Grenades, Field Prep, and Full Court is going to be able to maintain a way better DPS number over all of its ammo, not just the first magazine. And since your heavy slot is pretty much your only damage dealing weapon with this build now, obviously having one of the best things in that slot, then something that has a little bit more utility in different areas. So shooting off two magazines with us, looking at the rate of fire and DPS, including one reload, which has max reload with Field Prep and also LUNAFACTION, that took 5.383 seconds, which means the DPS will be 42,000 without full court. Then with full court at the max range, it's going to be 49,090. And it'll pretty much maintain that number over its entire reserves, and that's not even with any mods on it. So since LUNAFACTION isn't as vital to this build as it was before, what should you use now? Well, you could still use LUNAFACTION for that quicker reload speed with your 11 Death, or if you want to use the first shot of Loaded Question more often than just waiting for it to reload with auto-loading holster, you can also just shoot, reload, and it's not that bad, it's pretty quick. Another thing LUNAFACTION does is it will give you that double range with Empire and Rift, which will help out Huckleberry from range. I know it's still very hard to use Huckleberry at that range, even for mouse and keyboard, but it's still something to consider with that damage drop-off. Another thing you can use is Traverse the Steps over LUNAFACTION, and this is going to help you with a more run and gun playstyle. If you want to just shoot your loaded question shot and then run around without swapping off of it, then it's ready again in like 2 seconds. This could work pretty well, but at the same time, auto load and holster pretty much is the same vein, but it's definitely an option. You can also use something like Chromatic Fire, which will help Huckleberry be even better by giving it Firefly in the element of your subclass, which will help it with that AoE ad clear and make it even better, but at the same time, loaded question pretty much is the king of this, so you're once again just double dipping in the same utility, which doesn't make too much sense. Or you can use something like Controverse Hold, which will give you your top tree grenade more often. Pair that with something like Oppress the Darkness for that 30% debuff, and that will greatly help you with your damage output of this build, which is kind of its weak point right now. So that is very helpful also. That way, every time you do shoot your Love and Death, it has that 30% debuff, so you're maximizing your damage and your damage output, which is very limited, with only the one weapon really contributing to that. So this build got changed a lot in a few different ways. Huckleberry is pretty much the only remaining part that is the same and feels the exact same as it was before. Loaded question is still that god tier ad clear for groups. There is no better feeling than getting that lineup perfectly on a bunch of ads, shooting one loaded question and then they just all die. It is by far one of the most satisfying things in Destiny 2. But before, loaded question was also pretty good for single target damage, then also killing a bunch of majors in different locations. You could just drop your LUNAFACTION Rift and just shoot them one at a time, and now it's a lot worse at those things. Then you have Wendigo GL3, which still has really good utility and really good burst damage over that first magazine, but once you get past that first magazine, the DPS falls off greatly, and you don't necessarily need that really good utility in a build like this, where you pretty much have the 2 best ad clear weapons in the entire game in your top 2 slots, so you don't really need an ad clear heavy weapon. So it makes a lot more sense to use something like a God Roll Love and Death, which will have a lot better DPS over its entire reserves in place of the Wendigo GL3. And that kind of leads to the entire issue with this build in the current meta. Before, there was a lot of overlap in the different utilities of your weapons. Huckleberry was pretty much the best ad clear in the game, then also was pretty good at major clear. Then you had something like Loaded Question, which was really good at group clear, then also good at major and single target damage. Then you had something like Wendigo GL3, which was very good for single target damage, obviously. Had really good utility with that blinding, and with group major clear, whatever didn't die was blinded, so it helped you out a lot there. So out of like the 3 major categories, red bar clear, major clear, and single target damage, all of the weapons were good at 2 of the 3. But now in this meta, without LUNAFACTION and also changing to Love and Death, pretty much every weapon is only good at one thing. Huckleberry is really good at red bar clear, Loaded Question is pretty much the same, kind of throw in majors slightly into that conversation, then Love and Death is only good for single target damage. And this overlap is what made the build so good before. You pretty much had something, if not 2 things, for everything in the game. The build just overall flowed really nicely together, and it just doesn't feel the same anymore. But at the same time, this build is still extremely fun, extremely good, and it'll definitely get the job done in the right activities in the game. Something like a raid boss, this will not work very well with, because your sustained damage is not that great with just a single grenade launcher. But outside of that, in the opening encounters of a raid or strikes, public events, whatever you name it, this is still one of the funnest builds in the game. And once again, nothing will ever be as satisfying as shooting a perfect loaded question shot at a bunch of ads and just watching them all explode at the same time. Anyways, the rest of the video will just be some gameplay of this build. It's very easy to tell where this build works well in this current meta and where it really struggles, compared to before, where you could pretty much take this build anywhere in the game and it felt like it could do everything you need to do and do it extremely well. But overall, this build is still extremely good. We are comparing it to what was, in my opinion, at its peak, the best build in Destiny's history. So obviously it might not be as good as it was before, but it's still extremely good and very fun. Let me know if you still use this build or if you just kind of dropped it completely because of the fact LUNAFACTION got changed. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.